My hope is that you're starting to feel a little bit more comfortable modifying your website by using your child theme. We're going to continue to work with our functions.php files so that we can make some further edits to the website that we're working on. Keep in mind that one way that you can change the default behaviors of WordPress is using the file called functions.php. This file behaves like a WordPress plugin and allows you to add features and functionality to the WordPress site through PHP code. If you saw the last exercise that I did with you, you saw that we added some code to our functions.php to add a font awesome icon to the beginning of all of our posts. We're going to work a little bit on this page of the website so that we can refine what's going on. I just wanted to show you that this is my blog page, and I have chosen to have all of my posts show up on the blog page. By default, they're going to show up in reverse chronological order. What I actually want to do is on the blog page is I want to show certain posts, and there's other posts that I do not want to include. Let's go into the backend portion of WordPress. Here I am on my post page. We didn't look at this previously, but one of the things that happened when we added our custom PHP to the function file is that not only did it display the font awesome icon at the beginning of the post title, but in the back end, it's actually printing this HTML, which is allowing that icon to show up. This makes it a little more difficult to look through the post area of WordPress. So let's first of all take care of this issue before we move on and address some of the other things that I want to resolve. I'll jump back into my code editor, and this is the block of code that we had used on the previous lesson. Basically, what's happening is the filter that we're using is modifying the title everywhere in WordPress, including the admin dashboard. We want to ensure that the font awesome icon only appears on the front end. So we need to modify our functions file. We're going to go ahead and modify the condition that we have right here. So I'm going to add another element to my condition, which will prevent the icon from appearing in the WordPress admin area. After the if statement, I'm going to open a set of parentheses and I'll write exclamation is_admin, open close parentheses. Then I'll use double ampersands. I'll get rid of this opening parenthesis, and we're going to leave the get post type with the parameter of ID, and we'll use the triple equal sign and set this to post. What's happening now is admin is checking to see if the current request is in the WordPress admin area. It should return true in the admin dashboard, which is the post editor, or it will return false when viewing the actual site, which is the front end. We're going to go ahead and negate this statement by using the exclamation point, meaning only apply this if it's not occurring in the admin area. The get post type ID ensures that this is only applying to blog posts, not pages or custom post types. The rest of the code is just going to exist as it did before. This line of code is basically prepending the font awesome icon to the post title. And then the return title line of code is going to return the new title with the icon, so that will be displayed on the site. We are hooking into WordPress by using add filter. Add filter lets us modify the post title before WordPress displays it. The title is the WordPress hook that filters post titles. Add emoji to post title is the function that we created, which is attached to this hook. And then we're passing in a priority of 10, which is the default priority, and 2 is the number of arguments that we want to pass, which is basically the title and the post ID. If we save our code and return to WordPress, you'll see if I refresh the back end, we no longer have the font awesome code appearing here. And if I go into my blog and refresh, we still get the font awesome icons appearing at the beginning of each of the post titles. This approach allows us to keep our dashboard clean while we're able to add the icon everywhere that it matters. Now what I wanted to point out to you is I'm going to go into some of my posts. We'll start with this one right here. And you can see that I have several paragraphs. In this particular post, I've also gone ahead and added an excerpt. However, if we go to the front end portion of the website and we find that post, you will see that the entire post is showing. I find this to be not very user-friendly because why would I show the post in its entirety on the post repository page? The other thing that I want to alter is right now all of my images are getting somewhat cropped. I have prepared my images so that they are the correct aspect ratio in how I want to display them on my post page. So you can see that my images are somewhat longer and they're cropped a little bit shorter, but obviously it's cropping the image when it's being displayed on the front end. So let's go ahead and see if we can alter some of these things. In order to do this, you'll want to go to Settings, you'll want to go to Reading, and you're going to want to make sure that for each post in the feed, you'll include the excerpt. Even though I have this choice selected, it is not respecting that particular choice. The reason why is that we need to modify the WordPress template file that is controlling this page. That file is going to be the blog template. So if we go to our templates, and I'll want to make sure that I'm working in my child theme, I'm going to go to blog home, which is the page that's controlling this particular blog page. We'll click on this, and there's a couple things we'll want to modify here. The first thing is that if we look in our list view and open the group that contains the query loop, you will see that inside of the query loop, it is currently displaying content, which means that it will display the entire content of the post. We are going to swap this out with the excerpt. So I'll click my plus sign. I'll search for excerpt. I'm going to choose the excerpt. And if I go back to list view, you can now see the excerpt is here, and you can see that this is displaying. I'm going to click the 3 dots on content and simply delete this. You may get a warning if you modify your templates. So I'm just going to click delete because that is something I want to do. And before I leave this page, I'm going to click on the featured image. We're going to go to the styles, and I'll come down here to aspect ratio. And instead of using the default classic 3:2 aspect ratio, I'm going to switch this back to original. This will ensure that the original aspect ratio is going to kick in. I'll hit save, and let's go back to the front end of our website. If we refresh now, you can see that my page has updated. So now the appropriate aspect ratio is showing for the blogs where I have featured images, and it is showing an excerpt. The excerpt currently is picking up any specific excerpt that we added, but if the post does not have a specific excerpt, it's just going to take some of the first part of the post and place that in. Keep in mind that if you want this behavior to be altered, if you want to control what the excerpt is, you'll have to manually add the excerpt to each post. I'm going to go back to the blog, and before we leave this area, the other thing that I want to do is I want to ensure that on this page, I am only showing the elements that I particularly want to. I'll select the query loop. I'm going to come here to this sidebar and make sure that I'm clicked on block. And we're going to go to query type. So right now it's using a default query type, which means it's going to display a list of all of the post types. If you click custom, you can alter what shows. So I do want to show posts. I want to show newest to oldest. I don't have any sticky posts, but I'll just leave this at the default. You can alter how many posts are going to display on the page, but the important part is to open this filters area. And we're going to filter by taxonomies. We're going to only put categories that we want to display. And I have a category of trips, which is the category that I want to display in this area. I'm going to save. And before I show you in the front end, let me just go to my posts. And you can see that many of my posts have trips and some of them have testimonials. And actually, now that I'm looking at this, some of these need to not have trips. Trips is my default category. So I'm just going to change this to testimonials as well as this one right here. And I'm just doing a quick edit so that I can make this alteration. And now you can see that I have several of my posts that have trips and then 3 that have testimonials. If we come back to the front end and we refresh our page, you will see that now we are only showing the blog posts that have the category of trips. The testimonial posts are no longer being shown on this particular page. The final thing that I want to augment is I'm going to change a little bit of my CSS where the blog posts are displayed. So in order to do this, I'm going to open up my developer tools. I will right click and choose inspect. And if we look in this particular area, you can see that we have a series of list items which contain each of our particular posts. The list items are surrounded by some divs, and I feel that the spacing between my posts is a little bit excessive. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to alter this element. What I like to do before I alter anything is I like to create my own custom class so that I'm not inadvertently affecting other pages that might be using the same classes. We'll return to the WordPress dashboard. I'm going to go back to my editor, templates. We'll go to the blog home. And what we're going to do here is we're going to select on the query loop. I want to make sure that I'm selecting the group, and this will allow me to get an individual list item, essentially. We're going to come to advanced, and under additional CSS classes, we're going to add a CSS class. I'm going to call this post list. I'll save. If we return to the front end portion of WordPress, and if you keep your eye on this area, when we refresh, you can see that the div now has a class of post list. So now that I have post list, I will be able to remove some of the padding on the bottom of these elements. And I think in addition to removing the padding, I'll reduce that down on both the top and the bottom. I'm going to add a very light gray separator between these elements. So let's go ahead and do that now. I'll return to my code editor. I'm going to place these in the style file, and so far we don't have any styles. So I'm just going to make a comment here. I like to separate my styles with comments so that I can keep track of everything. We're going to use our class of post list. I'll open my curly braces and we're going to set our padding, and we'll just set the padding to 20 pixels. I'm going to set the border bottom, and we'll just make this solid 1 pixel, and we'll just set the color to a very light gray. I'm going to save, and we'll return to the front end. If we refresh now, you can see that my changes are starting to kick in. So I do have this underline in between the elements, which I like a little bit better. And then it looks like my spacing is not totally kicking in, and that's because this CSS is being applied as a inline style. So if we look here, you can see style padding top, and it's using some variables. So in order for this to actually work, we're going to have to overwrite the inline style. We can do that by adding important. And before I do that, I'm also going to change the color of our Font Awesome icon. So I don't really need to add a custom class to this because it already has the FA solid FA water. So I'm just going to use FA water as a selector for that. We'll go back to the back end. And after our 20 pixels, we're going to use exclamation important so we can override that inline style. And then we'll go ahead and make a rule for our FA-water. And we're just going to change the color. And let's go ahead and set this to a shade of blue. I'll plug in the hex value that I want to use, and let's save this. We'll return to our front end. And if we refresh, you can see that both of those changes have now occurred. And so now I'm able to control some of the behavior that we are having on this blog page. The final thing that I'm going to do is at the large screen, I find that this area of my website is a bit too narrow. So I'm going to go back to my dashboard and we're going to go into our styles. We're going to click our edit styles area right here and we will go to layout. And this content width is where it's specifying the content width. So right now our content width is being restricted to 645 pixels. I'm going to change this to 1000 pixels to make it a little bit more wide. We'll click save. And now if we go back to the front end portion of WordPress and refresh, you're going to see how this area becomes much wider. I like this a little bit better. And the nice part about this is it's still fully responsive. So if I go into my toggle device toolbar and I make my website smaller, you can see that everything shrinks down beautifully and we don't have any problems with the overall behavior. As I've mentioned before, whenever possible, try to make your edits through the dashboard portion of WordPress. But in some situations, you might not be able to alter everything that you want to change. So in that case, it's perfectly fine to go ahead and modify your child theme, whether it's CSS or some of your functions files. These things can all be modified so that you can ensure that your website is going to display in the exact manner that you want.